Church bells ring across the United Kingdom in honor of Queen Elizabeth II. Today we remember Her Royal Highness and the impact she made. Tributes are pouring in from the Vatican to Washington, D.C. Join us for team coverage. And new monarch. Watch as King Charles III returns to Buckingham Palace to assume the throne. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, September 9th, 2022. Gun salutes ring out across the United Kingdom as Britons mourn the loss of their queen and welcome a new king. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sabol. We have team coverage of Queen Elizabeth II's life and legacy. Colin Flynn will join us from Rome with reaction from Pope Francis. Owen Jensen has the response from the White House, and Eric Rosales shares tributes from Capitol Hill. But first, we want to bring you the latest developments from England. King Charles III arrived at Buckingham Palace for the first time as Britain's monarch. He flew to London from Scotland, where he was with his mother when she died. The King and Queen Consort greeted well-wishers outside of the gate and viewed flower arrangements placed in honor of the late Queen. The new king later addressed the nation in prepared video remarks.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation.
King Charles III also made a commitment to respect all people.
Wherever you may live in the United Kingdom or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life.
Acknowledging his mother directly, the new sovereign said, quote, Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. In Parliament, Prime Minister Liz Truss praised the late Queen as one of the world's greatest leaders.
The Commonwealth is the family of nations it is today because of her. She was devoted to the union of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. She served 15 countries as head of state, and she loved them all.
The tribute by Prime Minister Truss followed a moment of silence to honor the late Queen during a special session today. Later, in London's St. Paul's Cathedral, Prime Minister Truss read from Scripture as members of Parliament gathered with some 2,000 others for a public prayer service. So Pope Francis remembered the Queen, and in a telegram of condolence, the Holy Father assured prayers for the Queen and for the high responsibilities to which the new King Charles III is called. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Good evening from Rome. Yesterday, Pope Francis sent a telegram to King Charles III saying he was deeply saddened to hear the news of the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and he expressed his heartfelt condolences to the royal family and the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. In the telegram, he paid tribute to a life dedicated to service, someone who he said bore witness of faith in Jesus Christ, and he added that he would be praying for the Queen's eternal rest. He also said he would be praying for King Charles III as he now took up his responsibilities and duties as king. English-born Cardinal Arthur Roach released a statement as well to Vatican media, in which he noted that the late Queen displayed an outstanding witness to the gospel and the values of the common good, family life, peace and concord amongst people. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, expressed his profound sadness following the news of the Queen's death. And this morning at 11 a.m, churches, chapels and cathedrals across the UK tolled their bells for special services in memory of the late monarch. At the Vatican in Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
As the White House flag flies at half-staff in honor of the Queen, President Joe Biden talked about when he last saw Her Majesty in person and also put his pen to paper in remembrance. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, President Joe Biden traveled to Ohio today to talk semiconductors, but it's the passing of the Queen that is dominating world headlines. President Biden was the 13th sitting U.S. president to meet Queen Elizabeth II. They first met some 40 years ago.
In Ohio this afternoon, a reporter asks,
"You going to the Queen's funeral, sir?" "Yes."
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden visited the British Embassy in Washington Thursday to sign a condolence book for Queen Elizabeth II. At a reception for the Democratic National Committee before jumping into politics, the president first said this.
She was an incredibly gracious and decent woman. And the thoughts and prayers of the American people are with the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth in their grief.
Over the decades, President Biden was just one on a long list of U.S. presidents to meet the Queen. Others included President Dwight Eisenhower and President John Kennedy, as well as
Mr. and Mrs. Nixon were host and hostess at the residence of the American ambassador and Mrs. Hay Whitney.
In the 1980s, the Queen shaking hands with President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan. Years later, posing for pictures with President George W. Bush and First Lady Laura Bush.
But talk we will. Listen, we have to. Disagree from time to time we may, but united we must always remain.
And in July 2018, President Donald Trump and Queen Elizabeth walked together inspecting the Honor Guard. And as this Sunday marks 21 years since terrorists attacked the United States on September 11, 2001, America's longtime ally consoled the nation deep in shock and mourning. President Biden writes, the Queen stood in solidarity with the United States during our darkest days after 9/11, when she poignantly reminded us that grief is the price we pay for love.
Also tonight, President Biden has proclaimed this coming Sunday, September 11th, as Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance. Americans are asked to observe a moment of silence at precisely 8:46 in the morning Eastern Time. That's when the first plane hit the World Trade Center. And regarding the Queen's funeral, the president also told reporters today he didn't have specifics of the trip yet to reveal, but again, he did confirm that he is going to the funeral. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
On news of Queen Elizabeth's death has caused a number of lawmakers on Capitol Hill to remember the monarch and her visit to Washington more than 30 years ago. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has ordered the flags to be lowered to half-staff in the Queen's honor. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales continues our team coverage with reaction from the Hill.
Good evening, Tracy. It was back in May of 1991 that the Queen of England paid a visit to Washington, D.C., and right here to Capitol Hill, where she made a joint meeting to Congress. Now, during that speech, she talked about the importance of the relationship, the special relationship between the United States and Great Britain.
A significant part of your social contract is written down in your Constitution. Ours rests on custom and will. The spirit behind both, however, is precisely the same. It is the spirit of democracy.
Listening to the address in the House chamber that day was Republican Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama, who is retiring after 44 years on Capitol Hill. He tells me he met the Queen during that visit.
A long time ago, right here in the Capitol, and it was a great honor. We in America, we have a multi-faceted heritage, but originally it was British, you know, and a lot of it there, and we have the blood and the connection and the language and respect. The Queen will be missed.
Also in the chamber, current House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who in a statement said in part, quote, Her Majesty was a pillar of leadership in the global arena and a devoted friend of freedom. Queen Elizabeth embodied the highest spirit of civic duty, earning the reverence of her people and the respect of the world.
She's been there a long time and always been very dignified. I had the chance to meet her when she came to the United States years ago, and just a charming person.
Other lawmakers tell me they are looking ahead to the next chapter under King Charles III's leadership.
I know it's going to be a big transition, but I hope it'll be, for the people of the UK, also a time of celebration as they think about what they've achieved as a nation in the last 70 years, and they celebrate her life and what they have to look forward to.
On Tuesday, both in the House and the Senate, a bereavement resolution will be passed, and then they will actually recess for the rest of the day in honor of the Queen. After that, a delegation will actually attend the funeral later on, possibly in the next couple of weeks. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
We go now to Tom Heine, a Catholic author and journalist based in Devon, England. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
it has been more than 24 hours after Queen Elizabeth's death, her death was announced. What is the mood in the country now, and how are people reacting?
Well, there seems to be genuine grief. You're always sort of watching over your back and seeing, do they really mean it? When the news presenters look solemn, but you can kind of tell these days when people do mean it. And there's a sort of lump in the throat. It's a genuinely significant moment. There's a bit of trepidation because she was a genuinely good person. And there seems to be sort of uncertainty about sort of what we're going to do without this incredible moral compass that ruled over us. There's a lot of chaos and uncertainty about our identity as a nation, and she embodied it somehow. And but personally speaking, I'm just very proud of her, and I think a lot of people, especially a lot of the Christian community in the UK, are just very proud of her. She was a good Christian woman.
She was indeed, and I understand, Tom, there'll be 10 days of mourning in the United Kingdom. What can you tell us about what will be taking place during this time? I know a special service was held at St. Paul's Cathedral earlier today. There was, and for an increasingly secular country, it's amazing how at these big moments, suddenly we switch to religion. When death happens, whether it's during war or any kind of calamity, really, even during the COVID to an extent, suddenly, just as the images of the Pope sort of were shown around the world during COVID, the other voice certainly here was that of the Queen. And I think with the mourning, it's not really going to affect sort of most people, to be honest. There will be people wearing dark colours. There'll be sort of a somber sort of like tone set in the media and in government. But a lot of people are going to want to see the body of the Queen when it's lain in state. It's going to dominate everyone's thoughts and the news. I read just earlier that 200,000 people visited the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother, when she lay in state. So goodness knows how many people are going to want to do that. There are going to be more sort of very moving scenes, I think, over the next few days. Tom, we have about a minute or so left. I do quickly want to talk a little bit more about the Queen's Christian faith. And I understand that you attended a church service a few years ago where she was in attendance, and it really left quite an impression on you. Can you quickly talk to us about that? Yeah, I read a lesson, and obviously I didn't sort of look at her whilst I was reading, but I was aware that she was there. But then as she processed out of the church before any of the rest of us, as she walked past me, she looked me in the eyes, and it was a look I'll never forget. The church was full of big army types who'd been to war, but the moment she walked into the church, they all braced up. They all totally respected her. And in that moment, I saw someone there was a touch of God about her, to be completely honest. Well, Tom, thank you so much for that. And please stand by, because we want to talk to you coming up a little bit later about your new book and your own faith in just a few minutes. Thank you again. Thanks, Tracy. Coming up, new developments in the fight for the unborn in 3 U.S. states. And a special conference in Rome reflects on proclaiming the gospel. A pro-life law in the state of Indiana faces a new legal challenge. A ban is set to take effect next Thursday, but the ACLU has filed a lawsuit to block it. They argue it would violate religious freedom, claiming some theologies would permit killing an unborn child in some circumstances. All voters in Michigan will determine this November whether the state's constitution will guarantee a right to abortion. A state court overruled the election board and accepted signatures from abortion advocates who support the measure. Meanwhile, South Carolina's Senate failed to amend a 6-week abortion ban. A proposal would have eliminated exceptions for victims of rape and incest. The existing law is on hold, awaiting a state Supreme Court review. South Carolina's 20-week abortion ban remains in effect. Well, a parish in New Jersey is grateful for the return of a stolen statue of Our Lady of Fatima. The pastor credits prayers and an upgraded security system for the recovery. A 64-year-old suspect faces charges for the theft. An International Congress on Catechesis is taking place this week at the Vatican. The Catechist, Witness of New Life in Christ, is the theme of the event, which aims to explore the link between catechesis and moral formation. The participants will meet Pope Francis tomorrow at the end of the Congress. Joining us now from Rome is Jem Sullivan, Associate Professor of Catechetics at the Catholic University of America and member of the International Council for Catechesis. Jem, great to see you. Can you tell us more about this conference and what you talked about over these past 2 days?
Thank you, Tracy. It's good to see you, and thank you for having me. You know, the renewal of the Church is linked inextricably to the renewal of catechesis within the evangelizing mission of the Church, because the Church exists to evangelize, as St. Paul VI said. The reason the Church, her deepest identity is the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ as the way of life that is fully human. And so this conference, it's been a real gift to be a part, to participate in this Third International Catechetical Congress here in Rome, which is a truly international gathering of bishops, priests, deacons, religious, and lay catechists from over 82 countries from around the world who are coming together to reflect on how we can better catechize our faithful within the evangelizing mission of the Church. So it's been a wonderful moment to really come together with people from all over the world, which is usually what happens in Rome. The truly universal character of the Church is experienced here. And
Jem, I understand one of the topics was the contribution of catechesis for ecclesial and social renewal. What more can you tell us about that? Sure, Tracy. You know, that was a talk that we heard, a presentation we heard this morning. It was an excellent sort of way to reflect on how catechesis invites the members of the Church, the faithful, to really see their living Christian witness to faith in Jesus Christ as part of the renewal of both the Church and of society. So the speaker, Cardinal Cherny, told us that we have to be aware of, for example, the poor and how we catechize, we include them in our catechesis, that preferential option for the poor that the Church has, always remembering that in a way the poor can evangelize us. They can teach us how to live the Christian life because of their suffering, because of their struggles. They teach us how to, in fact, be disciples of Jesus in the world today. And before I let you go, Jem, I understand that recently you were appointed a new role. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and the projects that you're working on? Sure. The International Council for Catechesis was established by St. Pope Paul VI in 1973 as a consultative advisory body. And so this group is from representatives from all over the world, from the Americas, from Europe, from Africa, Asia, around to discuss and to reflect on catechetical issues and challenges, both opportunities and challenges facing the Church today around catechesis within the evangelizing mission of the Church. So catechesis is a form of evangelization, is inviting others into this new life in Jesus Christ, and that what are the
difficulties that we have today? What are the opportunities that the church is facing? So that's what this International Council for Catechesis studies and proposes initiatives to help catechetical leaders, to help bishops, priests, deacons, religious, and all those involved in the ministry of catechesis to do that more effective proclaiming of the gospel of Jesus to the world today.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. It's always great to be with you. God bless you.
You're welcome, Tracy.
Up next, stories of conversion. Inspiration from those who turn to God in times of trouble. A journalist, Catholic convert, and now seminarian tells us more. We are back now with a Catholic author's new book examining the life-changing power of faith. As examples, he uses historical figures like medieval King Alfred, a doctor on an Arctic whaling vessel, and a composer in communist Poland. In The Song of Ascents, Tom Heine writes in part, quote, "Some people foolishly say that being Christian is the delusion that life is easy or nice. What is rather true is that when you do suffer, you know to whom to go. You utter the words, Jesus or Lord, and know you are not talking to the air." And Tom is back with us now. Tom, thank you so much for staying with us. First off, I'm curious, what inspired you to research these historical figures separated by centuries, yet united by a reliance on God?
Sure. Well, my background is biography. I've written biographies before I came back to church, and just like some artists are drawn to painting portraits, biography is always what I've done. And you know, there's a tradition within the church of testimony and story, with Acts of the Apostles, even the Gospels themselves, and so it's been quite natural for me. I've not really questioned it. It's how I make sense of stuff, seeing how faith has actually worked out in real time in people's lives.
Yeah, and I know in one section you describe retreating German soldiers during World War II when they were surrounded by Russian troops. They made a rather unusual request. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so they asked Bibles to be dropped to where they were. There was no chance of them being rescued. The Russians were moving too quickly. And bear in mind that a lot of them had grown up in the Hitler Youth. They hadn't really known the Bible very well, but they had this visceral need to have bits of scripture. And they tore these Bibles up, what they were, dropped by airplane, and they held them to their chest. There was a survivor who recounted this, which is... well, it's an extraordinary moment. I mean, I could interpret what's going on there, but so could anyone else. It just, that image says a lot about the power of the Bibles that we sometimes take for granted in our homes.
Yeah, it certainly does. You know, I want to turn now and I want to talk about your faith journey. You were an atheist, and then you became a Protestant military chaplain, and then 2 years ago, you converted to Catholicism, and now I understand you're in the seminary. What an incredible journey. I'm curious, what drew you to the Catholic faith?
Well, I think, I mean, when I say atheist or when atheism is said, I was probably just more interested in other stuff. I had quite a hedonistic life. When I came back to faith, the Christian faith, full stop, I was living in South Africa. I was based out there as a freelance journalist. And that was the big step for me, realizing that this story about this baby in Bethlehem was actually true. Once I'd made that step and I started reading, the Catholic writers that I read had a depth to them that I couldn't find anywhere else. And so I was gradually drawn through people like St. Augustine and St. Therese of Lisieux to understanding the value of the sacraments, understanding that church unity lay within a reunited Catholic Church. That was the conclusion I came to, and it was partly logical, partly intuitive.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to reading your book. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tracy.
For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sabol. We leave you tonight with another look back at Queen Elizabeth II, who died yesterday at the age of 96. As you can see, she visited with several popes during her time on the throne. Good night and God bless.